Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into the How to Life podcast. My name is Dr. Laura Jaggett, and right now you're listening to episode 47. Today's topic is about how to decrease stress and how to consciously take that pause before you react to something emotionally or physically. This is such an important life skill to learn for all ages, and a great way to do this is through yoga. Yoga is not all about getting your body into contortions. At its core, it's about connecting breath to movement for focus, control, and meditation. These are powerful tools to help you direct your mind and your perspective. Speaking on this topic is my guest today, Deputy Chief Sasha Larkin of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Sasha is a remarkable woman. She's a wife, she's a mother, and when this interview was recorded, she was Captain Sasha Larkin. But she has since been promoted to Deputy Chief, where she, and I'm going to read the whole description here, she oversees the Homeland Security Division that encompasses the Southern Nevada Counter-Terrorism Center, SWAT, Air Support, K-9, Armor, which stands for All Hazards Regional Multi-Agency Operations and Response, and Intelligence Section. So that's a full plate. And there's no doubt that there's a lot of responsibility and stress that comes with that. So how does she do it? A major asset is her yoga practice. She has been practicing and teaching yoga for over 20 years. And I think it's safe to say that Sasha is proof of how yoga can enhance and balance your life. You are going to love this interview with Deputy Chief Sasha Larkin. Good morning, Sasha. Thank you so much for being on this show, the How to Life podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
This is going to be a great topic today, and you have a lot of experience and information to give on this. But before we start, will you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Sasha Larkin. I am a police officer for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I am a captain, which means that I run a bureau or sometimes an area command, or what you'll see on TV maybe called a precinct. And for the last 4 years, I ran 2 different ones. And then a few months ago, I got transferred back to headquarters to run a unit called the Office of Internal Oversight and Constitutional Policing, which is a whole lot of fancy words for saying we investigate officer use of deadly force and in-custody death, and any sort of situation where substantial bodily harm is inflicted by our or on our officers or employees.
And in addition to that, you also are a wife and mother.
Yes, I would say probably first off, I'm a wife and a mother.
How many kids do you have?
So I gave birth to 3 of them, 2 at the same time, and then an older one. And then I have a bonus son. So I've been very lucky.
So you have been balancing your full-time job as wife and mother and your full-time job as police captain for many years now.
Yes, I've been on the police department just over 22 years now. And if you're doing the math, that means I was about 7 when I hired on. But it's fine, right? You know, I always say that birthdays are a privilege. They're not a right. Not everybody gets another one. So every time that I get another trip around the sun, we celebrate.
Now, you can't see Sasha because this is just a podcast, but I'm telling you, she is so put together, and you would never know that she has what seems like a pretty hectic, at least intense life. There's a lot of situations going on, not only with kids, but what she has to do as far as her command post. Sasha, how do you do it? How do you balance both of this and keep the stress levels bearable?
Well, listen, I mean, when it comes to appearance, it's the one thing we can control to a point, right? Like I can get up and make sure that I exercise every day, that I take a shower every day, and that I show up at least looking in a professional manner, right? I might have really dark bags under my eyes, but I will at least show up in the most professional way possible. I read a quote once that said, dress for the job you want, not the one you have. And I always remembered that because especially in an environment where you're really trying to make a difference and influence those around you, how we show up every day is the first impression that people get of us. And then for me, the morning is the most important thing to set the tone of my day, right? I've had a meditation practice and a yoga practice for well over 2 decades, which is for me the crux of patience and allowing me the ability to process and assimilate that which I come into contact with. And then the second part of that works in harmony, conjunction, is having a physical outlet. I run or go to the gym 6 days a week. Otherwise, I don't know what to do with all of the burdens and other people's stories that I carry around. There has to be an outlet for that trauma. And I guess in the beginning, like in my 20s, it wasn't quite as severe, but after 2 decades, your cup gets very full and you have to have a way to disperse it. And I think that's why you hear the statistics for us, at least, if you do 25 years of policing, they say your lifespan is between 5 and 10 years after you retire. If you do 30 years, they say it's about 2 to 5 years after you retire.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm trying to really break those statistics and find a way to relieve the stress before my cup starts to overflow, which in full disclosure, Dr. Laura, it does overflow sometimes.
It does for everybody. But many people, especially a lot of women who are balancing family and work, they don't know how to do that. They don't know how to put themselves first, which I think is key. I love this saying, when you're on a flight and they're giving the instructions and they say, should we lose oxygen, put your mask on first before you assist your child or whoever you're taking care of. You have to put your mask on first so that you can help everyone else around you. I want to ask you, Sasha, you've been doing meditation and yoga for 20 years. Did you start that as a way to alleviate the stress, or did you start that on your own and then realized that this is helping you in your family and your job?
So I got into a really bad car accident just before I went to the police academy. And I went to a chiropractor, and I should mention that I'd done martial arts for 20 years. That was my thing. So I kind of prided myself on thinking I was tough and that I did something kind of tough, right? And, I was young. I was in my teens and my early 20s. And after this car accident, I was going to a chiropractor, and she said, listen, you don't need chiropractics. You need yoga, because I was having lower back pain. And I was like, yoga? I don't do yoga. I said, I do martial arts, right? Like, I need to protect my image. I'm about to go in the police academy because I had all of this ego surrounding what I thought I needed. But the truth is, in yoga, that I've learned, is we are attracted to that which we need the least, from people to food to exercise. So she says, no, I want you to go check out this yoga place. It's power yoga. And I was like, oh, all right, well, I'll try it if it's, power yoga. And so I went, and it was Ashtanga yoga, Ashtanga being the 8 limbs. And it was a very grueling physical practice, at which point I was challenged and I thought, okay, all right, I can do this. Right. And so that was my introduction into yoga. And I had no idea it was going to help my mind. I just knew that it helped me feel strong. And I was really getting something that I couldn't quite put my finger on out of it. I felt different when I left. And then I found a teacher that really started to explain the philosophy and the science. We call it Sri Vidya, Sri meaning supreme or ultimate, Vidya meaning science. And understanding that what I was doing was actually moving stagnicities in my body through breath. And I was getting breath and life force to places in my body that didn't normally get it. So it kind of happened on accident. And then once somebody explained to me what was happening, I recognized that if I actually did this practice, it would be the outlet for the stress that I was obtaining at work. So I think it kind of happened in synchronicity, symbiotically, where I learned it and then started to apply it on a more serious level.
Are you meditating while you're doing yoga, or is that something additional that you brought into your life?
So in the beginning, I would say it was during the yoga practice. It took me a long time to be able to still my body long enough to sit. And so remember, and for your listeners out there, it's really important, if you dabbled around in yoga at all, I don't think meditation is just something that at least most Americans can just sit down and do. Most people, their mind is way too chaotic. Their body is too stiff. In truth, the 8 limbs of yoga, are used because the physical practice is used to open your body to where you can sit without pain. And it's used to move the stagnicities through breath work to where your mind can actually slow down long enough that you can sit for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes and do a meditation practice. So in the beginning, I think the yoga practice, the asana practice was my meditation. And after probably 2 or 3 years of that, I learned different techniques for meditation and was able to actually sit. But I'll be honest, there's been times in my life where I couldn't sit. The first time I was involved in an officer-involved shooting was very traumatic, and I don't think I could sit for close to 2 months. And my teacher gave me a mantra and said, hey, I want you to do just this, just focus on this, even if it's while you're driving, do this. And that kind of got me through that time period. And then there's, after we had the big shooting here in Las Vegas, 1 October at the Mandalay Bay, again, I couldn't sit. I just couldn't. There was too much trauma just bubbling in my body. I had to run. I had to be outside. I had to have this extrication of energy. And again, it took about 2 months before I could then sit again with myself and be okay with the stuff that was coming up.
So it's okay if you hit a stumbling block and you have to backtrack a little bit, take it down several notches to reset, rebalance, and then move forward again.
Yeah, I think that is yoga. It is the acceptance of, listen, in my 20s, my body was different. And then I went and made some kids in my 30s, especially making 2 of them at one time. Your body changes and shifts, and everything from your abdominal wall to just your hip flexors are not the same. So your yoga practice changes. And I believe that yoga is the ability to ebb and flow from one space and one time to another without rigidity. So it's been the goal.
That was so well said. And that is life, isn't it? Ebb and flow. And sometimes you come up against a wall and sometimes things are moving so smoothly. But to be able to be water, not rigid, and whatever is happening in your life, take that and flow with it until it opens up again. Beautifully said. Does yoga take up a lot of time? Many people don't know how to manage their time and they'll think, oh, I have too much going on, or there's just not enough downtime for me. What would you say to that?
I would say, I get it. I get that thought. It's prioritization. And look, before I had children, I did yoga 7 days a week, 2-3 hours a day, right? I would go to work, I would come home. It's all I had to do. And I remember during that very selfish time in my 20s thinking, how do people not have time? Just, you have to prioritize it. And then you have kids and your job changes and you're like, oh, okay, I understand. There's other people that need your time. So my answer would be, it can take up a lot of time if that's what you want it to do. If you want to do a 2-hour physical practice, followed by a 20-minute breath practice, followed by a 30-minute meditation practice, then that's amazing and it will change your life. But if what you can do is get up in the morning and sit for 5 minutes locked in your closet, which I've done because it's the only place it's quiet in my house, I will sit and hide for 5 minutes and do alternate nostril breathing, right? Just moving stagnicity, balancing the left and right side of my brain. Maybe that's my practice for the day. And then while I'm brushing my teeth, I grab my foot and pull it to my glute so I can stretch my quads out because I know I'm going to be standing for 10 hours, right? So some days the practice is different. But I'm also aware that it's a sacrifice if I want to feel change. You know, the old adage, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you always got. So if I want to feel change, I have to do something different, which means I have to get up an hour earlier so I can do a full practice, which means I can go for a run, right? I mean, I get up at 5 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, every single day, except for Sundays. And it's a sacrifice, but it just means that I know that the after effects of what I do early in the morning will pay for the rest of the day. So I will tell you, I know that people are busy and I know it's not easy, but start with 5 minutes, see what kind of effect you get, and then make it 20 minutes and then make it 30 minutes. And you just keep pushing that alarm up. And maybe it means you cut TV down at the end of the night, you go to bed a little bit earlier, right? You have to start to make sacrifices in the places that you can. And I know, trust me, I know it's not easy, but start with 2 days a week, 5 minutes a day. And from there, start to build out incrementally.
When I had my young children, I realize now, looking back, that when they went down for a nap, that would have been a good time for me to go down for a nap, yes, or at least, 20 minutes of just meditating or being quiet. I instead used that time to just put all of my energy into my work, and I just ran out of gas. Wisdom is hindsight, isn't it? Looking back
completely.
now, I would have done it so differently. And I did catch up eventually in my late 40s, but I wish I would have done it sooner. So those of you who are young, with young children and young careers and a young relationship, with your spouse or your partner, you must take time for yourself. Start now. Don't wait until the kids are grown up. Start now. You're going to enjoy it so much more. How can somebody find yoga? What should someone start with?
So I believe that yoga should meet people where they are and then take them where they need to go. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. A lot of people want to do a home practice. And listen, let's take COVID out of it, because I understand that COVID has changed our world as far as group classes and wearing masks, because I understand that. But in the perfect world, I always tell people, I recommend in the very beginning, especially the first year, go to a class. Find a class near your home, because convenience is everything. And you want to find a place where you can go and there's no excuses about travel time. And then I will tell you that take yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. It doesn't have to be 110 degrees in the room, but it has to be a space where the teacher will give you feedback about your alignment, because we want to prevent injury, because you don't want to do yoga and injure yourself and not be able to do it again. So you want to go somewhere where they understand the alignment of your body, where they will take you from one space to the next, where they have beginners yoga, right? Once a week is a great start, because a true beginning yoga practice is supposed to teach the student how to link breath to movement. The very first thing I teach my students is inhale, raise your arms up over your head, and make your inhale last the entire time. And then the exhale, your hands come back from the top over your head down to your legs, and the exhale has to last the whole time. For most people, that takes weeks to learn how to lengthen their inhale and slow their exhale. Because especially as women, and I'm sure you can agree and relate to this, we are better givers, so exhalers, than we are receivers, which is inhalers. So most women struggle to lengthen their inhale. Their arms will come up about halfway and they're done. Okay, start over. Slow inhale and really receive. So it's a lesson in receiving and grabbing that life force and allowing it to permeate within. And then exhale, letting go, right? Let go of that which no longer serves you. Just those movements is what the beginning yoga practice is. Listen, putting your foot behind your head, there's no pot of gold. I thought there was. The first time I got my foot back there, I thought that confetti was going to fall from the ceiling and something was going to happen. Nothing happened. And it was like, oh, it's kind of a letdown. But learning to put movement to breath changed my life. Even I'll give you a great example, just going to the shooting range, taking that inhale, put my finger on the trigger, slow exhale, squeeze it back. Breath is related to everything. Inhale as you begin to make a left turn in your car. Exhale as you let the turn go, right? So you're completely involved in a movement. Everything can become that moving, living, breathing meditation. So.
I've never even looked at it that way. And I'm a chiropractor who I'm on board with everything you're saying, and an athlete as well. But putting breath to movement, being aware of that is kind of mind-opening.
That's the journey, right? And here's the other thing, having the awareness of that breath. I can't tell you how often I'll be sitting in a meeting, maybe getting yelled at, or knowing that something's going wrong, or crime numbers are up, or something happened, and I'll feel myself hold my breath. And I think we all do it. Like it's where we brace for something. It's almost like the sympathetic nervous system reaction. There's an app now on our iWatches. I don't know if you have an iPhone watch, but it tells you to breathe. Like literally 4 times a day, my watch tells me to breathe. And my husband says, why do you need something to remind you to breathe? I said, well, because it pauses me to go at least 4 times a day. I'm going to take an inhale that refreshes my entire body, because otherwise our breaths are short and choppy and stressed. Mm-hmm. And it's only 1 minute of, okay, let me just really feel that full inhale and receive, and then let go. It's a game changer.
Well, it's a reset, and it helps you stop what you're doing, focus on your breathing, which really is the only thing you can control. 100% for 1 minute, focus on that, and then turn your attention back to whatever you were doing prior to that.
That's right.
Now, we're talking a lot about women because we are women, but men also have stress. What have you noticed as far as men are concerned?
I love that you asked this question, and I have 2 parallel answers that are very different. One is, if you ever read back through some old Steve Jobs interviews, he, along with a lot of other Fortune 500 CEO moguls, got into, I know, transcendental meditation, where they do 2 20-minute blocks a day. And TM is a very different meditation than I do, but really, really good as far as beginner's meditation and giving people an anchor. And I know my husband did TM, still does. And it's very simple. It's not real esoteric. It's nothing that involves God or anything else, because some people are a little worried that meditation is going to take them out of their religious beliefs or going to put them in a space where they don't want to feel influenced by a different set of godlike values, if that makes sense. So TM is very, basic, doesn't involve any of that, just links breath, the movement of the mind, and so on and so forth. So I will tell you that I know men do very well with those very short twice a day blocks. And it's a great way to just get regrounded and, like you said, refocus. But the other thing I'll tell you is a couple of years ago, we were building a unit called the Office of Community Engagement here in Metro. And that is a big umbrella that houses all of the outreach efforts that our department does. And I will tell you, it's vast and wide, and that the LVMPD is light years ahead of agencies across the country when it comes to police reform, how we do community outreach, our involvement in the religious communities. Guarantee there's not a religious community in town that we don't have some sort of connection or relationship to. So we were building this. And then at the time, as we were starting to stand it up, we were looking at ways that we could influence somebody who gets involved in crime. And we broke it down very simplistically. Look, we have 3 chances to intervene or influence them. One is before they get involved in a life of crime. How do we get the school-age children? How do we divert them? How do we get them into, PAL programs or programs where they have positive influences and interactions with the police, where they have things to do after school so they're not going to get in trouble, right? All of these things, diversion, intervention programs. The second time we have to influence is when somebody's already involved in a life of crime. Let's say they're in a gang or they have in a life of human trafficking, right? They have a pimp, or even in terrorism. I'll give you, and I'll tell you why I link those 3 things together. How do we give them an anchor to get out of that life and reset them? That's the second, probably the most complicated one. But the third one, which is really near and dear to my heart, is once they're incarcerated. Once they're incarcerated, they're part of the system. They have nowhere to go. So we essentially have time on our side to influence them. So we built a program that had 5 tiers. We taught yoga and meditation. We taught nutrition, parenting and leadership, how to have positive interactions with the police, and things to do once they get out. And I had a good friend of mine who's a local yoga teacher here in Las Vegas, Dre Gardner. We'd been doing yoga together for 20 plus years. He grew up in a very difficult life in California. He had run with some very difficult crowds. He understood, he could relate to a lot of the challenges. And he's a very proficient yoga teacher, but he was able to go into the jail and teach them a very basic yoga class. And we did it for close to 24 months. And we started doing some exit interviews with some of these folks. And simultaneously, we were teaching nutrition. We were bringing in, teaching them we were juicing with them in the jail. We brought in juicers and we taught them the power of giving their children this health benefits and for them. And we taught them parenting. Why do you say I love you to your children, right? People were like, you have to tell people that? Yeah, of course you do. Because if you were never told as a kid, it's not something you'll ever pass on, right? But at the end of these interviews, to your question, I'm taking a long route. 2 or 3 of these inmates that were in for armed robbery, murder, right? Some very serious crimes. During these exit interviews, after having done yoga once a week for 18 months or even 6 months, they said, listen, I can't touch my toes yet, but I, for the first time in my life, understand the value of pausing before I have a reaction. I understand I'm in charge of what happens after that initial trigger. And for me, that was one of those mic drop moments in my career. Like somebody understands they can take that before they fly off the handle. That moment to consider consequences, to consider what sits on the other side of that, and to understand it's only a temporary reaction for a permanent solution. So I guess the answer to your question is it reaches men differently because it affects them viscerally, I think sometimes different than it does women. Testosterone is different. Estrogen is different, right? We might have an emotional breakdown where they might have an angry reaction. So I just think that's the value of yoga, of learning to connect to your breath and just having self-awareness.
Amazing.
And I think that self-awareness can lead to that self-control, right? Because rarely can you have it without knowing how to influence it.
Sasha, do you meditate and do yoga with your kids? Have you taught them this practice?
Yes, they love it. And they'll come in and sit with me if they see me in there. And for me, yoga for children is about acceptance and it's about kindness. So I tell them, I don't care what your passion in life is, but it has to be fueled by kindness.
And it's also a chance for you to spend time, quality time with your child. And your kids are watching you. So make sure you give them a good show. God, you're so cool. I'm just so impressed by you, Sasha. Beautiful and put together and accomplished.
Well, listen, it takes girl connectivity and girl power to support each other because adulting is real.
Yeah.
And then you realize if you end up with like 1 or 2 or 3 girlfriends that support you and they're your crew, you're like, wow, I'm so lucky. And then I get to meet women like you that are also living it, right? You're living it. You're in it. And it's,
it's a journey. And, I don't think it can be instantaneous. I think it does take experience to learn all of these things. But the goal of this show, my goal is to give these younger people, men and women, everybody, some wisdom, and words don't teach, experience teaches. But if you have a little framework, you might get there quicker than I did, or you did, or we did, but you'll get there eventually.
That's it.
Sasha, before we go, what are some bullet points that you can share with the audience to get started on this mindfulness?
Some days you will fail. Some moments you'll get up and you will forget to pack your kid a lunch. You will leave something vital for a presentation you're supposed to do at home. You will zig when you should have zagged, and you have to have a little bit of self-forgiveness. At least once a week, I fail. And when I say fail, I just mean I don't have all my marbles in a basket that I thought I did. I'm going too fast and it just happens. So love yourself enough to remember that you're human. That's my very first advice. And please know that's the pot calling the kettle black, because I am a perfectionist through and through, and it's torture for me to drop the ball. But every day that becomes my yoga is remembering that I too am human. The second thing I would love to offer is to be present. It goes so fast. I mean, my son is 10, and just yesterday he was in my stomach, and I was trying to balance being pregnant and coming to work and wear a uniform. And now I blinked my eyes and he's 10. Really, every day I'm trying to just, when I'm there, I put my cell phone down as much as I can, and I look them in the eye when they're talking to me. And I try to give them feedback about whatever story they're telling me, no matter insignificant it might be. Be present. Turn the TV off, put your phone down, be present with them. And then the third thing I will tell you is that you have time for whatever you put first in your life. You do. You have time for it. Sometimes I'm doing my mantra as I'm driving to the gym. And sometimes, I have to turn the radio off completely and just, immerse myself in doing a little self-reflection. Every day is a balancing act, and every day is a new acquisition of what that balance looks like. So one day at a time, know that it goes fast, and remember, life is short, and today is a gift. That's why they call it the present.
Sasha, thank you so much for sharing this information and this inspiration with us. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. My honor.
I really enjoyed that conversation with Sasha. I hope that it perhaps gave you a new perspective on the benefits of yoga. If you've never considered yoga or you are on the fence about it, I encourage you to begin. Just start at the very beginning. You can't skip steps if you want to lay a solid foundation on which to build. So start small. Start short, but just start. It can only benefit you. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know by hitting the 5-star review button on Apple Podcast or whatever platform you're listening on. I would love to hear your comments about it as well. Or if you're listening on my podcast, send me an email on the contact form. You can access this episode again, share it, and learn more about Sasha Larkin at howtolife.com/047. That is all for today, everyone. Please join me again next time. And until then, peace out, stay calm, and just breathe. You got this.